justice? Is there some heat too? How did you blow my mind?
You do the welcome. You're better at the welcome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2, season 2 of I Fought the Law podcast.
Brian, didn't you wear that shirt in the last episode?
Yeah, it's crazy how laundry day worked out.
The reality is we record these back to back, and Jason now is shirtless because I stole his shirt.
Yes, and we are also
Hot.
A bottle of wine in. And why don't you tell them about what we're drinking here today?
So again, we went down to our local alcohol dispensary. No, honestly, it's much more than that. So one of our favorite places to buy alcohol and many other things is Rudy's. I think the full title is Rudy's A Kitchen Paradise or something.
Yeah.
Owned by
Been around a long time.
Been around a long time. It's a Twin Falls staple, and our friends Andy and Kylie Hohwheeler just purchased it a little bit ago, making some changes. They now have a little wine bar. Thus, we were drinking the wine. But they also sell some specialty beers. They don't sell just run-of-the-mill, but they have a great local selection. And what we're drinking today is Burt's Brewing out of Garden City, which, by the way, I used to live in Boise, and Garden City was seen as like the kind of the armpit of the area. And Garden City is now cool.
It's cool.
Yeah.
If you watched last episode 1,
Yep.
season 2, episode 1.
Good job keeping track.
Yeah. The wine that we enjoyed from there, Split Rail Winery,
Yep.
has a place in Garden City.
Yeah, we didn't mention this in the last one, but Split Rail is actually, the winery is out by where I grew up. It's in Marsing, Idaho. And I grew up in Homedale, which is very close to it.
And what's the best part of Homedale?
I don't know. What is it, Brian?
If one were navigating via Google Maps and had a choice of roads to go down in Homedale.
Are you talking about Chicken Dinner Road?
Yeah.
No, that's actually in Marsing. That's right by Split Rail Winery. There's a road called Chicken Dinner Road.
It is called Chicken Dinner Road.
My uncle used to live on it, and he was embarrassed by it. And I don't blame him.
I don't blame him either, but there are a few things in life that I enjoy more than like a fried chicken dinner. Like fried chicken, mashed potatoes, like
I know that about you.
maybe some, I don't know, green beans.
Do you remember when we were in Atlanta and we
I can assure you the answer is no.
we got to Atlanta and we like looked up and it was like great chicken, and we ended up going down and we were out of place.
We were out of place in downtown Atlanta.
And it was a great night.
It was a great night. It was a diner,
Yeah.
but it was like kind of 80s themed.
Yeah.
Also / karaoke, gangster rap karaoke.
Yeah. It was fantastic.
Yeah, there was, and it was like multi-levels.
That chicken was good.
That chicken was good. And it was also like 3:30 in the morning.
That's right. Because we got in very late. It was the only place open. But that was some good fried chicken, man.
Yeah. I do remember that night in Atlanta.
Yeah. In all honesty, I was talking about a different night in Atlanta at a different place, but that night was good with fried chicken
Oh,
too.
the other place, the open mic night place.
Yeah, the open mic night. And we got to listen to some like Def Slam poetry. And
We're having two white boys from Idaho. We're having a great time in there, enjoying a great dinner. It was open mic night. We were also out of place there as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Great food.
Great
and
food. That chicken was bomb.
Oh my, yeah.
Yeah, it was so good.
I've thought dirty thoughts about that chicken.
I know you have.
But also then the next morning we were at a conference, and the people hosting the conference from Atlanta said, "You went where?" The two of you from Idaho went where?
Yeah, exactly. Like you were not supposed to be in that area. Not supposed to be.
Everybody was kind and
fantastic,
welcoming, and holy crap, did we enjoy good food and good songs, good poetry, good you name it. That was a fun night.
We've had a lot of those experiences. I find that people have perceptions that are not what they really are.
Not at all.
So
not at all.
But that's where we got talking about Chicken Dinner Road.
Chicken Dinner Road. Thank you, Homedale. which doesn't have Chicken Dinner Road. Marsing does.
Marsing does.
But what's the other one in Homedale? Or maybe it's still Marsing.
There's a lot, man.
The
I grew up when I talk about Homedale, you can basically hear banjos playing. Oh, you're about to whisper something to me.
the kind of dirty one, like the series of.
I'm not going to talk about the dirty one. Okay, I'll talk about the dirty one. There's 3 roads, and it's actually going up to the town Wilder. 3 roads. As you go wilder, there's 3 roads in consecutive order. The first one is Eustick. The next one is Boehner, but it's spelled Boehner. So Eustick and then Boner. And then the next one is Upper Pleasant Ridge. My brothers and I have all stolen those signs. I don't have them anymore. But it was kind of the rite of passage that you had to steal Eustick, Boner, Upper Pleasant Ridge. And it's so horrible. And I've now broadcasted it on a podcast.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, Bonnie.
But again, none of those are actually in Homedale. Marsing and Wilder. Homedale is a very nice place.
It is. It's gorgeous. I remember. You remember when I went out there? I had a case with the family from out there.
No.
Probably 10 years ago.
Okay. Were we partners at the point?
Yeah, we were. And your
forget
uncle
this.
had referred this family. Their son was in a pretty bad accident on his way to school.
That's right.
On a country road.
I remember this now, yeah.
Probably Boner Road. I don't know.
It's Boehner. It's Boehner. Let's not go down that road anymore. Pun intended. Actually not.
So many jokes.
So you were in Homedale.
I was in Homedale, and I'd never been there. I grew up here, been in a lot of places now, but no reason to ever go out to Homedale. Beautiful place. I was shocked.
Yeah. I grew up with 1.5 miles of riverfront property. Really lucky. I mean, we were very poor farm kids. We didn't have anything but riverfront property.
Yeah.
And it was the best place to grow up. Beautiful. I grew up seeing bald eagles and catching bass and catching catfish and not realizing how good I had it. So shout out to Homedale, Idaho. And no Deliverance music playing when I say it. Exactly. Yeah. No, still a great place. Interesting thing is I took my wife out there, told her a lot about it and was like, hey, you got to come see where I grew up. And so I take her out and there's this 1/2 mile lane and we're driving down it. And as we approach the house, number one, everything was different and I couldn't process it. But we get there and I'm like, man, there used to be this huge barn here, this what we call the Blue Barn. And there used to be this huge barn and there was this huge cottonwood tree. And I'm like, man, they cut down the cottonwood tree and they replaced the barn. And we looked and she looked at me like, you're an idiot. And then I looked again and it was the same cottonwood tree and it was the same barn, but the barn was 10 by 20, tiny little shack. And in my head, growing up there, leaving at age 17 when I went to college, but everything was so much bigger. And I got to look around and see where I grew up and realized, oh my gosh, I grew up in not a nice place.
Yeah.
But it was the world to me. And it was this big, beautiful place and the river was awesome and it still is. But it was a real interesting experience for me to go back to Homedale and see where I actually grew up. And I walked away with this realization that it doesn't really matter. I came from very, very humble beginnings. I won't describe it any further so as to not tick off my mom and dad. But it was just very humble. I mean, probably a 800 square foot house that we raised 6 kids in.
Yeah. Pretty rad kids.
Yeah, my brothers and sisters are awesome. My parents are awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, really humble. But to me, it was this palace.
Yeah.
And so I walked away now owning a little bit bigger of a house and providing for my kids a little bit more going, that doesn't matter. What truly matters is the experiences they have. And it kind of changed who I was. And this was probably 5-6 years ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because we didn't talk about this beforehand. This
No,
is not
this is
scripted.
just coming up.
But I was in San Francisco recently. I mentioned that in episode 1.
That's right.
And I took my wife, and I was there for a conference, the American Association of Justice, which is a national trial lawyers association.
That's right.
And I was there for that conference, but I had a day kind of free that before we had to get on our flight home. And that's where I grew up. Was just outside San Francisco in a little town called Walnut Creek. Not so little anymore. Yeah. But I was like, hey, Susan, do you want to, that's my wife, do you want to go see where I grew up? And she was like, yeah. So we rented a car. We drove out there. It's like a 20-minute drive. It was, and few things struck me. One is very similar to your experience. The size of things and, you know, what was once huge to us is no longer. But 2, I never drove a car in Walnut Creek, California.
Oh, yeah.
I moved to Idaho when I was like 13. So I never once drove a car. I knew exactly where I was going.
That's
without like Apple Maps or Google Map or whatever, like navigation.
Yeah.
I didn't need it. I could go find my friends' houses. I could, you know, get to all the places we used to go, the schools, the shortcuts we used to take through people's hedges.
Yeah.
You know, I knew exactly where to go, which was weird. But seeing all those things, and you know my history there.
Yeah.
There's some stuff there. Maybe we'll talk about it at some point.
Sure.
It's a good story. It's a good story.
For another time.
For another time. Sorry. Sorry. Anyway, it was kind of cool to show my wife. Also very, you know, very kind of emotional, but seeing like my old house.
Yeah.
And seeing, you know, there used to be a palm tree. They've since taken it down. The palm tree don't last that long. But very tall. Squirrels used to be in it. And like the side of our house, there was a fireplace. Fireplace went up like the side, and it had, so there was brick outside the wall, right?
Sure.
In the backyard. And I could climb up. It had little platforms. And then went like kind of skinnier up towards the chimney. Right?
Sure.
And so I would climb up the fence and hop over onto the platforms, and I'd sit there and I'd talk to the squirrels in the tree. They'd come down, they'd be like,
You know what?
and I'd be like,
Hold on. For Brian, you got
hours, Steve.
No,
For hours.
100%. Do not ever make those mouth noises in this. No, please don't. My wife just shut off this podcast.
My wife has just filed divorce papers because I made that noise.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, but to that point, I had a similar experience. I was telling my wife that I used to ride a bike down this half a mile dirt lane, and we got to the main road that has this kind of L shape, and I was like, wow, they redid the road. I was like, there used to be this huge hill here that I bombed down as a kid. And then I like literally got out of my car, and I stood up and I realized this is the hill. It was 2 feet. I'm not joking. It was 2 feet over like 30 feet. It was nothing. But to me as a kid, when I was 10 and, you know, got to ride and first, like no longer on the paved or no longer on the gravel road. Now I'm on paved road, which was smoother, and I could just go fast. That was the world to me.
Mm-hmm. Dude, this is crazy. Because honestly, we didn't script any of this.
No.
But one of the things we did is driving around my old little neighborhood in Walnut Creek, which was, shout out to Walnut Creek and the woodlands in Walnut Creek, California, the best neighborhood I've ever lived in. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody participated in everything.
Sure.
Just a great, great neighborhood to grow up in.
Yeah.
Very diverse, very, you know, at least by Twin Falls, Idaho standards, very diverse.
That doesn't take much.
It doesn't take much, but very cool. But I'm driving around showing Susan like things we did, and part of the neighborhood kind of goes up a hill like that.
Sure.
And so I had friends that lived up on this hill, and I was like, hey, we'll go up here. We used to take our skateboards up, walk up the hill on these roads that came down, and ride our skateboards down. And I was like, you know, I'm sure this is smaller than what we used to think it was. I have 2 stories here. One is we kind of went by where one of my good friends lived, and we'll get to that in a second, but that was the road we usually came down. And I remember thinking, I'm sure it's not that big. And then we pulled up on this road, and I was like, what the fuck were we thinking coming down this thing on our
Bonnie.
skateboards?
It was huge.
It was huge. I was like, how did we stop those things? And like, if I saw my kid coming down that road on a skateboard, like, holy shit.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Anyway, shout out to my buddy Johnny Kneuppel and his road.
Good name.
Yeah. Oh, good dude too. But here's the story, and it has to do with Johnny. I was showing Susan around the neighborhood, and I was like, this is my buddy Johnny's house, and this was the road we always used to ride skateboards and bikes, and sometimes we'd get those little like, oh shoot, what were they? The little 3-wheeler things, you know? Yeah. Like those things, and ride them down that hill. Anyway, and I was like, Johnny was the best. We played all sorts of sports together. We hung out at his house all the time. And his parents were Cal Bear fans, University of California, Berkeley. And they would take us to like football games and things like that. And as we drove by the house, I saw like a Cal Bears sign by the front door, and the cars in the driveway said University of California Bears. And I was like, there's no way they still live here. Like, I haven't been back since we moved in 1990.
So it's been 30 years.
35 years.
Jeez.
And I was like, there's no way they're still here. You know, most people have moved out of the area or whatever. And I was like, but what are the odds? You know? And I was like, and here's the point I wanted to make is I was like, I'll just go up and see.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? It was like a Monday afternoon, like, worst thing that could happen is nobody's here or it's not them. And I'd just be like, hey, I'm a weird guy from Idaho. Just nice to meet you. And I knocked on the door, and this old man came to the door, and I was just like, that's him. Yeah. And I was like, Mr. And I totally reverted back to like the 12-year-old kid. I was like, Mr. Kneuppel? And he's like, yeah. And he's looking at me because I looked like me. And he's like, yeah. And I said, I'm Brian Hilverto. And you could see him thinking, and I had this childhood nickname that everybody knew me by.
Sure. What was it?
My teachers, my parents' friends, like Birdie. Birdie Hilverty is how it came about. Mr. Cheesy Mac. Awesome.
It's my nickname from law school, Jason.
Yes.
You were on my phone for many years as Cheesy Mac.
Awesome.
Anyway, I said, I'm Brian Hilverta,
Yeah.
but you know me as Birdie. And the man lost it. Birdie! He starts like kind of jumping up and down. Like, we talk about Birdie in this house at least once a week. Caroline, Birdie's here. Like,
oh my gosh.
And so he's like, what is happening? And I'm like, hey, we were just visiting. I'm driving my wife around. And I just ran up to the door. Susan was still in the car. And he's like, get her, get in here.
That's so good.
And so I waved at Susan. She came in, gave him big hugs. They told me about where, Johnny was at and his sister and things like that.
Yeah.
My point in telling this story, because it has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today, but when you have I don't want to get like spiritual or anything, but when you have those impressions to just stop and try something out to see if it do it. Because seeing Mr. and Mr. Kneuppel, holy shit, highlight of my month.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great, man. Yeah, I had a similar experience, a little bit weirder. My grandpa, who was very old, passed away, and I got to go to Homedale and see his funeral, and got to see all the people I grew up with, and they look at me like I'm still 16, and that I still believe a certain way and act a certain way. And what's funny is I could feel myself wanting to be that way, and I don't know, it was wholesome. It was nice.
Yeah. Anyway, fun times, but crazy to revisit those childhood things.
Yeah.
It's very different and also very much the same as you remember.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
No, well.
I remember the time going to my dad's army tent.
Yeah.
As an adult. And having to crouch down.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was a circus tent when I was a kid.
It was huge, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's it. My daughter now, she's 4. She has a playroom upstairs in my house. And it's a pretty big playroom. It's probably 10 by 25 feet. but it's filled with hers. And every day I go home and I give her at least an hour, and most of the hours that's just pure daddy-daughter time is up in that playroom. And I don't care if it's tea parties or Bluey or some weird universe that she's created. I jump into it and I play the role, and I take on, I do accents and just into the world. And I am certain that in her mind, it is a palace.
Yeah.
And
She'll
it's just
always
this,
remember
it's just this little room that we go up in, and she gets to play. So,
Or how about when she goes to the cabin when she's 40?
no, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. She'll be like, this place was a mansion.
Yeah, and had all the things. My wife had that. She had a cabin up 100 yards away from where our cabin is.
Yeah.
And the way that she remembers that, like, so as we raise our kids, it's not about the things that we buy them. It's not about the size of our house. It's not about anything other than allowing them to be present and enjoy the weird imagination that they may have.
Yep.
Awesome.
Wherever they may be.
Yeah.
Right. Like the setting doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. Hey,
But
Brian,
they'll remember that setting.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How do we segue from that to Epstein?
Ooh. I've got a lot of suggestions, and I'm not going to say one of them.
Holy crap, that was horrible.
A lot going on in the world, Steve.
That's a good one.
Yeah, lots of stuff. We promised in episode 1 we'd take on some of the issues we're seeing in the world today.
Yeah.
Not necessarily from a political perspective, although there's a lot of politics involved, but more from a legal perspective.
That's right.
One of the ones we talked about was Jeffery Epstein. This is real interesting. Trigger warning for a lot of people. This is, the pretty sensitive stuff, but it's also become,
You can't swing the
front page
stick.
news on everything,
Yeah, it's everywhere. And what I find interesting is I watch the news, I listen to podcasts on both sides politically, but more than anything, I sit and I think, as a lawyer, I know different things. To this point, I actually made notes.
You made notes.
I made
on
notes for a
yellow
podcast.
legal pad. You fucking nerd.
Sorry, Bonnie. Yeah, I made notes. I didn't want to get things wrong.
Pad.
This is a first.
Welcome to I Fought the Law. We're fucking professional.
I wouldn't go that far. But no, so I've sat, and obviously everybody knows the Epstein file.
And you and I have talked about it a ton.
A ton. Jeffrey Epstein was a very well-known, not only pedophile, but human trafficker in young women. He owned an island that was known that he would bring people to, and that they would unfortunately harm little girls. Ages, as I understand, 12 to 16. And really, really tragic things. And not just a few, like
A lot.
hundreds to 1,000 young women. Horrible, worst of our humanity type of stuff. It's become sensationalized after he has been declared to have killed himself in prison after being charged a second time, and we'll get into that. The first time was he was charged in Florida, worked out a deal, a non-prosecution deal, but then later was prosecuted again and committed suicide. And that started a conspiracy theory, if it is a conspiracy, that maybe he didn't kill himself.
Can I jump into a real quick legal
Anytime, man.
Because a lot of people, maybe in the law or with some experience in the law, would hear what you just said and said, well, double jeopardy. He's charged twice.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
As I understand it, I'm not perfect on the details, but he had some charges out of the state of Florida and then had continued acts that he got charged for later actions.
Okay.
And so I don't know if that's exactly right, but I know some general tenets of how this all came about. And there were different players in his scheme to traffic young women for sexual times. I don't know how better to describe it, but he had
Rape.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's it. He had Ghislaine Maxwell that helped him allegedly, and she's been convicted after a jury trial. And then there were all of the Johns, I'll just call them, There was a prince from the UK that has been known to do this. And then what's really interesting is it started during the Donald Trump first administration, went through the Biden administration, and then during the second Trump administration, as Donald Trump announced that he would release the Epstein files, became popularized, and then they said there's nothing in them, and then all of a sudden it just blew up. And now we have different legal workings happening in the Ghislaine Maxwell and Donald Trump having political pressure, and it's all over the board. And that's me trying to stay out of the politics.
Right, because this is interesting to a lot of folks, and there's a lot of people talking about all the politics surrounding it and
That's
that
right.
sort of thing. Let me just start with one question though, like you mentioned, people commenting Johns and that sort of thing.
Sure.
Like, how does the government get a hold of that information?
Okay. And so this is sort of my forte. I do criminal defense. I mean, a Jeffrey Epstein could have been my client. I handle sexual-based cases in Idaho. I don't do a lot of federal. And so these are charged federally, but Jeffrey Epstein was charged at a state level in Florida at some point, and he worked out a deal, and that is a very key portion of this. As I look at the Epstein case, I see all of these nuances that I know differently than what's being projected by a lot of the news, because I know how things work. I forget your question. What was your question, Brian?
I forgot my question.
Awesome.
How does the government get a hold of this sort of evidence? Like,
Yeah, so it can come out in a bunch of different ways. Normally, it is a named victim or an alleged victim comes forward and says, "Hey, I was harmed," and then that starts an investigation. And when that happens, you can have at a state level local police or even attorney generals guiding police authorities to go and investigate. At a federal level, you have the FBI or other federal agencies that go and investigate. And then when they determine that they have probable cause, in the very least, they issue charges. And so that's what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. First at a state level, and he was charged in Florida, and then he worked out a deal in which he wasn't going to be prosecuted anymore and basically received probation.
yeah,
And then later at a federal level, he was charged with, as I understand, human trafficking of for the purpose of prostitution.
right.
And then got charged. But yeah, and in this kind of case, all it takes is it's like a house of cards. You have a lot of victims, and then one comes forward, and as they learn and discover the processes that happen, the FBI would come forward, have a full-blown file that everybody now calls the Epstein file of the information that they gathered, and then they prosecute. But in the prosecution, and this is what's really interesting that nobody really talks about, as you some kind of do, but as you prosecute these sex-based crimes, you always have to be very cognizant or understand that there are named victims that are underage girls. That have come forward that are willing to testify. And the last thing that you want to do is broadcast their name. And could you imagine if their names were broadcasted today? You would have people swarming their houses, making them relive the most traumatic experiences of their life. Like
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
And you would have the news hounding them for political purposes. So that's a real backdrop that very few people talk about, because the sexier thing to talk about, no pun intended there, is the political ramifications of who is on the list.
And so that's where I want to jump in and then kind of get into some of the other legal issues. Some people, especially looking at me more so than you, will be like, "You're just bringing this up because you hate Trump." And
No.
the answer is yes.
Yeah.
I fucking hate Trump.
Sure.
I have a lot of reasons for it, and I'm justified in it. And I personally believe if you defend him for some of his actions, you're just as bad as he is.
There's the politics.
But I will say this, and this isn't hard, because we've heard from a lot of people we know. They're like, "Well, okay, if Trump's on the list, what about Biden and what about Clinton?" I have no doubt that Bill Clinton is probably on that list.
Sure.
No doubt. And
Or a prince.
probably don't worry.
Yeah.
Or a prince, or maybe Biden or Biden's family, or I don't know. Anybody who's on that list that engaged in this behavior should be in prison.
100%.
I don't care what party they belong to.
And that comes from a criminal defense attorney.
Absolutely. And if you're trying to excuse Trump from this, or if you think somehow he's not on the list, you're a fucking moron.
Sorry, Bonnie.
No,
You're not.
You're not. Like, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
The dude is a rapist.
If he's on the list and if he did these things.
I mean, if you can look away from all the photos with him with Epstein, if you can look away from all those, the fact that he promised they would be on the list, that his attorney general said, I have the list on my desk. And then she said, I told Trump he's on the list.
Sure.
And then he says, there is no list.
Okay.
That's politics.
I'm going to play devil's advocate because that's politics. Nothing that I've seen in the news would be enough to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Without the list.
Yeah, without the list or further evidence.
Right.
As a criminal defense attorney, and I've got to make that clear. Like nothing that I've seen. I've watched his Howard Stern interview in which he says, "Yeah, I go backstage and to underage girls, and yeah, that's a perk of being the owner of the pageant is you get to see them naked." Yeah, even that doesn't rise to the level of a crime. And so, so you're basing a lot on assumption of what is on the list,
right?
But that's not the point, Brian.
That's not the point, and that's the reason I bring up leftist Brian, to be like, okay, here's all the shit, and the dude is guilty as hell, and anybody who's on the list that's proven should be in prison. Like that's all well and done, but there's a lot of legal issues here, right?
Yeah, a ton of legal issues. So you jump to the presumption that he is on the list and that it would be damning.
Right.
But your main point, I think, is release the list.
Yeah, sure.
So that we can see. And
that's the part that people like to talk about right now.
That's right.
Right.
And
that's why I say it, but that's not necessarily what you're addressing.
No. So as I look at the case, I think it's a perfect example because you have all of these parts of Ghislaine Maxwell's case, Jeffrey Epstein's case, and then the presumptions against Donald Trump that highlight the criminal process. I mean, for example, I can start off at the base. You said, how does it get investigated?
Yeah.
The investigation happened, and there's a file out there that we do not have access to. And mind you, one of the reasons for the fact that we don't have access to it is the names of a lot of victims. So in the sex cases that I have, even what I get and what I'm allowed to show my clients are the names are blocked out because those reports can become public. And the last thing we want, especially with underage people, is to broadcast their name on the news.
Right.
And so we use initials.
Yeah.
And so even on like no contact orders, if one of my clients is alleged to have sexually touched an underage, the no contact order will say you cannot come within 200 feet of AB, and doesn't say their name because that's a public record. So when you get into the Epstein file, if you have 1,000 victims, you can't publish that, and it becomes a very complicated process. So we've talked about a little bit about how it gets investigated, but then how does it start? Right now, what we're hearing a lot of is about the Donald Trump has encouraged the Department of Justice to seek to have the grand jury transcript against Jeffrey Epstein released.
What's a grand jury?
That's a great question, and obviously everybody talks about the politics of it. Some people say, "Oh, Donald Trump is doing this to show that he's innocent because nothing's in it." Other people are saying, "Oh, he's grandstanding because they know that the grand jury transcript will never be released." Okay, so let's talk about what that is. That's the question. So when a felony action is started, either at a state level or at the federal level, you start off by a process in which the state must prove by evidence, not just some paperwork, not an affidavit, but actually has to prove by evidence. They have to have a hearing in which they prove that there is probable cause to proceed in a case, not beyond a reasonable doubt, but probable cause.
very different standard, right?
Yeah, much lower standard. And a prosecutor choosing to do that can do it one of two ways. They can do it either in a grand jury, which is a very secret process. And also, what's really important is that the criminal defendant does not participate in that process.
So don't be confused with a trial jury.
That's right.
And a grand jury.
That's right. A grand
Very,
jury
very different.
has more people, and the role of the prosecutor is actually pretty interesting because they owe a duty to the grand jury to show both sides. The other way they can do it is a preliminary hearing in which the defendant gets to play a role with their attorney and gets to cross-examine. So in Jeffrey Epstein's case, it was a grand jury, and that makes sense because the last thing they want to do is put on a ton of young women in a public hearing to have to testify, because in those hearings, they're open hearings.
Yeah.
Like, I have cases in which young women alleged to be sexually abused, and they have to take the stand, and anybody from the street can walk in. Like, yeah. I recognize that's the case. So in a lot of sex-based cases, the prosecutor will elect to have a more private setting in a grand jury. Still there in front of a lot of grand jury members, but it's still a more secret meeting and not open to the general public.
That makes sense.
So Donald Trump has asked, that was loud.
That was loud.
Brian opened a beer.
I was waiting until you paused too. I was like, I'm going to make this super sneaky. And it was not.
It was not. So Donald Trump has asked the Department of Justice to open up the grand jury transcript. And when I heard that, it made me furrow my brow. Because number one, my brow furrowed. Because number one, I thought on a political level, I went, well, that means nothing. Because number one, it wasn't an action against him. So none of the witnesses would have testified against him. Right. But number two, there's not a chance in Hades that grand jury gets opened, because all of the witnesses were there in the secret meeting for a secret hearing for a purpose, to protect their identity. And the last thing a judge is going to do is go, oh yeah, for political reasons, let's open it up. So the political analysis would go, yeah, this is grandstanding by Donald Trump, but the legal analysis gets into what is a grand jury, what's the purpose, and how is it being used?
Right.
And so Donald Trump likely was not mentioned at all. And of all the Epstein files, if Donald Trump is in it, as Elon Musk has suggested, and as others have suggested, if he's in that, the one portion of that file that he's not going to be in is the grand jury, because it was not a grand jury against him. Yeah. It was a grand jury against Jeffrey Epstein.
But I would say, and me included, as a lawyer, but a civil lawyer, didn't really, until you explained it to me, understand the difference between like what is a grand jury and how it differs.
That's right.
It's a very select few members of our population that understand this difference.
That's right. And so
this is Trump saying, hey, let's release the grand jury. That sounds great to the American population.
Yeah. Yeah. It
sounds grand.
Sounds grand, like, oh my gosh, we're going to get so much information. But what really is contained in a criminal file, so we talked about the investigation by the FBI or local police. They produce what's called discovery. And discovery will be, as I understand, thousands of documents and thousands of hours of video that they collected on this case. But what's presented in grand jury is much more funneled down, because all they're trying to do is produce probable cause for the specific defendant that they're in. And actually, if they went beyond that, like if they started asking about Donald Trump or anybody else, it probably would be considered irrelevant, because it's not against Jeffrey Epstein. So that would not have been in there. So what's specifically being asked for right now is a file that absolutely is not going to have anything. And mind you, the Department of Justice already has this. They have the full file, right? Imagine this is the full file. The grand jury transcript is minuscule. Yeah. And they're going to know that he's not in it.
Yes.
And they're also going to know that a court is not going to allow it. In fact, I believe it was today, Ghislaine Maxwell actually filed an objection to it being released, saying, no, I'm still in this process. I have an appeal going, and we'll get to that. But I have all these things going, and I have an interest in it not being released and being politicized as well, which is a good point. So it's not going to get released. I would bet my right foot that it's not going to get released.
Absolutely.
And even if it does, I'd bet my left foot that it's not going to have Donald Trump's name in it because it was never focused on him.
Right.
So
Probably not going to also, no matter who's on the list, probably also not going to have a prince from Europe or
Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton or it'll
Diddy.
probably have Ghislaine Maxwell if she was an intricate role in bringing young women into this world, but it's not going to have all the other stuff. I get grand jury transcripts all the time, and I review them. I can't review them with other people because there are
private.
specific rules
They're
that are private.
confidential.
That's right. I can review them with my client, but there are specific rules on releasing them, and it's really hard to use them. And I know what they look like. They're not going to contain information about other people that might be involved.
Yeah.
More often than not, unless those people are being charged.
Let me change the scenario a little bit,
Please.
Mr. McCrae. Suppose you're an attorney involved here with somebody. There's some interesting sort of ethical obligations for attorneys, and attorneys that are involved having participated in things with Mr. Epstein, with Miss Maxwell, with President Trump.
Sure.
Is that a problem for those attorneys?
Yeah. This is another portion on my notes, but I'm not going to look at
You
it.
made notes?
I made notes. I'm so proud.
Did you make flashcards?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Next time.
Next episode.
Next episode. No, and yeah, that's the other interesting thing about this. So, for example, Jeffrey Epstein's attorney, the prosecutor who prosecuted Jeffrey Epstein in Florida in a state case.
The one where he kind of got the slap on the wrist, sweetheart deal, right?
He got a sweetheart deal. Okay. Absolute sweetheart deal. Probation, no prison time, just go out, you're fine. That sweetheart deal, that attorney that made that deal or part of the team that made that deal ended up being Donald Trump's secretary, I believe it, hold on, let me look at it, Secretary of Labor from 2017 to 2019.
Now, if you had flashcards, you wouldn't have had to check your notes.
Good point.
But yes, so
And
works
that's,
as Trump's lawyer.
that's right. And well, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So think about that. Number one, under the Trump administration, Donald Trump appointed the prosecutor who gave Jeffrey Epstein a sweetheart deal to the Department of Labor. Now, does the Department of Labor have much to do with Jeffrey Epstein? Probably not.
No.
So the level of conflict of interest there, not. It's just an interesting point. Okay. So Donald Trump elected the guy, or not elected, appointed the guy that ends up being in a role that had given Jeffrey Epstein a sweetheart deal.
Right.
Okay. Versus the one that is a conflict of interest. So tell our listeners what a conflict of interest is and our rules of ethics.
Basically, it's any time that you might have an ethical obligation towards one person or one entity and a similar obligation towards another person or entity, and you can't favor one in place of the other.
Yeah, let me give an example, a real world example.
Sure.
I was representing somebody on a murder charge. Okay, they were charged with killing another person. And I had represented them for 3.5 years. We had investigations, we had mediations, we had COVID happening. It was a crazy case. I was in it to win it. We were getting ready for trial. There was a co-defendant. It was a crazy case. In the middle or after 3.5 years, there was a person that came forward in our local jail that alleged that my client had confessed to killing. Okay, to the killing, to this person.
Perfect. Yeah.
Come to find out, I am that attorney's or that person's attorney as well.
So you're representing the person who's charged with murder and representing the person who has said this person confessed
That's
to
right.
the murder.
That's right. This really happened. And so for me, what do? I sit and I look, and we're bound by rules of ethics. Every state and every federal jurisdiction holds rules of ethics against us, and we cannot have conflicts of interest. Okay. And so as I look at this person that came forward, I think in my brain, I know things about you that I could cross-examine you on if you testified against my murder client.
Right.
And as I look at my murder client, I think I owe you an obligation to cross-examine this person. As I look at the other person, I think I can't disclose that because it's confidential in my brain what I know about you. So what I had to do, and this is a true story, I withdrew from both cases.
Yeah.
Because
It's the only safe way, right?
Because let's say the guy that my murder client actually confessed to this other guy. He would have an interest of coming forward to the police and saying, hey, I'll work out a deal and I will tell you what this other guy said on a more high-end case if you cut me a deal.
Let me
I can't do that.
Or whatever.
Yeah, I can't do that because I can't represent him in that because it would harm another client. And I can't represent my murder client because the other person, I can't cross-examine him because it's confidential what's in my head. So I withdrew from both cases. And this has happened more than once.
Yeah, it has.
And again, I'm in small town Idaho. We have local jails to where everybody talks. I have clients that are housed with other clients, and
Probably much harder in a small town than a big city, right?
yeah, that's right. But the point is you can't have a conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about potential conflicts of interest, what's happened in the last couple of weeks is that the attorney who actually represented as a client Donald Trump in a criminal investigation in 2024. I'm going to my flashcards. That's right, flashcards.
We've established you haven't done flashcards. It's okay. You made notes.
Yeah, and now I can't find out on my notes. I should have done flashcards. I forget his name. It's Tom Blanche.
Oh, yeah.
Tom Blanche represented Donald Trump in 2024 as his attorney. And mind you, conflicts of interest do not end at the end of a case. Okay. If I represented somebody, I was an attorney in 2008. If I represented somebody in 2008, and now we're 17 years later, I still owe that person a confidentiality.
You can't disclose their confidential information.
That's right.
Just like a doctor.
And I can't do anything against them with the information that I know. Okay. So Tom Blanche owes Donald Trump a duty to be confidential, and he owes him a perpetual duty to act in his interest. Okay. Now he is second in command at the Department of Justice. And he, with Pam Bondi, just went and met with Ghislaine Maxwell in a meeting that apparently was recorded. But when I heard that, everybody else was talking about the politics, but what went through my brain is, how does he get around conflict of interest rules, what are ethical rules? If he continues to owe Donald Trump a duty to represent him, how does he now go to Ghislaine Maxwell? And what if she said, yeah, Donald Trump is in those files? Because now, as a Department of Justice employee and attorney, he owes a duty to us, all of the American citizens, to act in our best interest.
Tell us Donald Trump is in the files.
So let's presume that Donald Trump is in the files.
Mm-hmm.
He might know that from prior representation of Donald Trump. I don't know that.
Sure.
But even if he didn't,
if we're assuming that's true.
If he goes forward and meets with Ghislaine Maxwell, he has this ethical obligation to Donald Trump. And now if he's asking questions about him being in the file, it's a clear-cut conflict of interest.
Because he can't rat out Donald Trump us,
no,
to whom he owes a duty.
Now he owes a duty to us, and he can't rat him out. And so he's sitting with a pure conflict. And I wanted to bang my head against the wall when I heard this. I'm like, how in the world does he get around this?
He can't.
Like, if I did that in our local bar, I'd lose my license within 3 months.
Absolutely.
I would. I'd be in our local, we get a magazine called The Advocate that tells when people gets in trouble.
Yeah.
I would be in trouble.
Attorneys get charged with ethical obligations.
That's right. I'd be in trouble.
And they would have yanked your license
in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Like I would never take that role, but for some reason he's in there. That's what struck me.
And I'd be hosting this podcast
alone
in Hilverta PLLC.
Nobody would be saying, I'm sorry, Bonnie.
Nobody would apologize to my mother.
That's right.
That's why ethical rules are created to protect our mothers.
And it's not exactly. In all honesty, it's to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
Because here we have somebody who has represented Donald Trump, who's asking a person about whether Donald Trump is in it under the guise that he represents us. That gives me pause for concern. Politics aside, that gives me pause for concern.
Yeah. And then what happens to this woman?
To Ghislaine?
Yeah, in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, today it was announced that she was moved to a minimum security. After this meeting, she was moved to a minimum security prison despite the rules of the prisons because she's a registered sex offender. Normally, registered sex offenders do not go to minimum security federal prisons, but for some reason she is.
So could a criminal defense lawyer like yourself go to a court and say, hey, judge, I know you sentenced my person on, as a sexual offender, right?
Yeah.
But I want you to move him to this minimum security prison.
No. So the answer
It's
is
not going to happen.
No. You've got the process wrong. So once a judge sentences somebody, they no longer have the jurisdiction over that person. It now goes to a Department of Corrections of some sort. So the Federal Department of Corrections, who is run by Donald Trump. Okay. And he would allow them to break their own rules. But your question is, now can Ghislaine Maxwell do XYZ is the most important part of this. Because as I watch this is the part that fascinates me most as a criminal defense attorney, is we have somebody who is now dead, Jeffery Epstein, who allegedly has a list that could convict other people. Okay, potentially. We don't know because we don't see it, but potentially that's the inference. But we have a person serving time who was convicted in Ghislaine Maxwell.
Right.
Okay.
And what did they convict her? What did they use as evidence to convict her?
All of the file. They used the file and
The list?
The alleged list. That's right. So apparently in this, she went to a jury trial and the list was used to convict her, and she is now serving a sentence. So she has two processes potentially going. First is an appeal. She has filed an appeal that's going up to the United States Supreme Court and arguing that deal that she made, or that Jeffrey Epstein made in Florida, the non-prosecution, because she was prosecuted on some of those things that Jeffrey Epstein got this deal for.
Yeah.
She is arguing that deal, because she was a co-conspirator, should have applied to her as well. We're waiting for the Supreme Court to hear this decision. But more importantly, that's boring to me. Whatever. That's a straightforward legal.
See, I mean, not necessarily what this Supreme Court would do with it, because I think
Right, that's a political analysis.
Right, but
you're jumping into politics.
Right.
I'm staying away from that. Okay, so politically, I'm intrigued, but as an attorney, I'm bored.
Right.
Okay, because instead, what I look at is I think, man, if I was her attorney, she's been convicted based on this list. And now the Department of Justice and the President of the United States are saying it's all a hoax. There is no list. There's nothing to disclose, and are hiding everything. And they're making public record that this doesn't exist. That means the evidence that she was convicted on is bullshit. The evidence that she was convicted on doesn't exist.
It's like if I robbed a bank and walked away with millions of dollars, and then the president of the United States said banks don't exist.
Or says that $1 million did not exist.
Yeah, we never printed that money.
We never printed that money. It didn't exist. And then you go, well, then why am I convicted?
Yeah.
So Ghislaine Maxwell, and this is what nobody's talking about, because she can file what's called a post-conviction or habeas corpus, which is an analysis saying, hey, something in my underlying case when I went to trial was screwed up. I had a Sixth Amendment right to have a fair trial. And here, the Department of Justice is saying this doesn't exist. This evidence doesn't exist. And they used it to convict me. If it doesn't exist, then why am I convicted?
Yeah.
It would be a claim upon ineffective assistance of counsel saying my counsel didn't thoroughly look into this. It would be a claim of newly discovered evidence that this doesn't exist. So all of these representations that this stuff doesn't exist gives her a basis later, and I'll talk about why it's later here in a second, but later to say, I was wrongfully convicted because the evidence actually doesn't exist. That's the position that they're taking.
No evidence.
And mind you, she has not taken that position yet because you have to wait until your appeal is done. So her appeal is at the federal level in the Supreme Court. And if she loses, if they say no, the non-prosecution agreement that Jeffrey Epstein entered into in Florida with under the prosecutor that was later a Department of Labor or Secretary of Labor under Donald Trump, side note, but if that doesn't apply to her and the Supreme Court says, no, you're shut down, then she gets to file additional filings saying, well, then this is all screwed up all in and of itself.
Right. And you said she can file that because of the writ of habeas corpus in
Well,
the Constitution, right?
Yeah, at a state level, we go, it's called a post-conviction. And everybody's entitled at least one. In different states, you get more, but you can challenge it. And it's a due process right. A lot of people think like, well, that's stupid. You were convicted, you should stay convicted. But I thoroughly support post-conviction rights, which are, if something happened, like if you had a really crappy lawyer, which happens. I've overturned a number of convictions.
I have 100% record on overturning convictions on post-conviction.
Really?
Yeah.
You did one?
I did one. Remember that one?
Oh yeah, for me.
For you.
That's
I covered
right.
for you. And I won the hearing. And because the lawyer had a clear conflict of interest that he didn't disclose to anybody.
That's right. He had a conflict of interest in a client that had testified in this trial, and he couldn't cross-examine him. He should have withdrawn, and he didn't. And so you got to put yourself in a criminal defense position or the defendant's position, in that you sit and you go, I'm entitled a fair process. And if my attorney isn't fair, then we overturn the whole thing. If the judge isn't fair, if the witnesses say things that can be disproven later at newly discovered evidence, we overturn it and we give you a fair shake. I'm super proud to have that part of our system and push that.
Do you know what the White House deleted from the Constitution's webpage today?
No, I didn't hear this.
Wherein they, the Constitution and its articles and
Sure.
that sort of thing are listed, and amendments. They deleted the right to habeas corpus today.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because that would be what Ghislaine Maxwell uses.
Exactly.
So habeas
So
corpus.
if you are a defendant of the Constitution,
no,
this is leftist Brian,
elements.
but also
You're
a
going
person who
politics.
supports the Constitution, and you say you love the Constitution, raise some fucking hell.
Yeah, and I face this all the time. People want finality, and I respect that. But our due process rights say we want to make sure that everybody that's charged with a crime is given a real fair process.
Yeah.
And even if that means you were even convicted by a jury of your peers, if prior to that jury or during that jury trial something happened that was not right, we
Constitutional.
either not constitutional or not fair, we overturn that conviction. And that's what Ghislaine Maxwell is going to be facing.
Yeah.
So let's say her appeal fails. The Supreme Court says, no, appeal done. You lose. Then she would go back and say, well, we have newly discovered evidence that the Department of Justice is now taking the position that a lot of the evidence that they used against me doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine you're in prison.
The state is coming after you, and you are in prison because
That's right.
we have convicted you with evidence that a jury found beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Convicted you of these crimes.
Yeah.
And now the state is saying that evidence does not exist.
Doesn't exist. And that's the devil's in the details. Where it's going to be a really interesting perspective. And so I intentionally separate myself from the politics and just look and I go, oh my gosh, if I was her attorney, I would be having a field day. This would be the funnest case of all time.
Yes.
Also the most stressful of all time.
Absolutely.
And you'd be working with it. So it's going to come out. We'll probably have a follow-up episode on this to see what happens.
Absolutely.
And now she might be in a position to say Donald Trump never touched anybody. And then that might be interesting to Donald Trump politically, but then people aren't going to believe it. And it's going to be
crazy.
It's going to be crazy.
I mean, she was moved to a minimum security prison, right?
That's right.
After this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what that's about?
After the meeting with Donald Trump's personal attorney.
Yes, who also is our personal attorney.
That's right. As a country, he's our personal attorney. It's weird, man.
It's
just weird. I see conflicts of interest. I see procedural things that people don't understand. It's
Here's
just
a crazy
it's
thing,
weird.
just dealing with sentencing. She's not even entitled to be at that prison that they moved her to, right? Because she's just...
That's my understanding, is that the rules don't allow her to be there, but now she is at a very minimum security prison.
We film these episodes back to back. So
Yep.
I am half a bottle of wine and a couple of beers in.
You sure are.
And I went to dinner before coming to record these podcasts.
And you drank there too.
And I drink.
Fantastic, Brian.
So let me just say this. What else legally is interesting about this case?
It really comes down to the procedural issues of Ghislaine Maxwell. Everybody's focused on Epstein. I mean, we could get into how people are housed and why the Epstein video of his cell is important, and the security in prisons, because all of that is part of it. Why he was held with no bond, all of that. Interesting to me, but the main thing I look at is not Epstein, it's Ghislaine.
Yeah.
Because here she's been convicted. I mean, put yourself in her shoes.
She's still alive. She has rights. She has the ability to invoke those rights.
That's right. So we'll see.
We'll come back to this.
We'll come back. So weird podcast episode, Brian, where we're talking about our childhood and then jumping right into Jeffrey Epstein. Not the smoothest transition, but we'll take it.
But if you look at it from another way, the absolute smoothest transition.
Yeah, but here's what I want to say is I hope that I've come across as apolitical.
Right.
I don't want to come across as the standard political person that looks at it.
And part of the reason I was overtly political is so I could set you up for that, because that's not
Sure.
what we're talking about here.
Sure.
I mean, I say my things, but what we're really talking about is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and the attorney perspective on this is really interesting. I think things are going to shake out, and I've seen it in Donald Trump's past, to where his attorneys have lost their license, including Rudy Giuliani.
I mean, America's mayor.
Yeah, America's mayor, and it's interesting to watch this political figure go, and all of these legal issues fall in the wake, and Supreme Court decisions being made, and attorneys losing their license based on arguments, and who knows where this is going to lead. It's going to be fun.
More to come on episode or season 2 of I Fought the Law.
Hopefully nobody's pissed off at me thinking that I'm political, but if you are, oh well.
And hopefully people are pissed off at me for being political, because you knew that about me all along.
And you enjoy it. See you guys.